Today, we're going to learn about how we can randomize our programs, which is going to make things a lot more interesting. To do this, we're also going to have to talk about libraries. Let's talk about what a library is. Go ahead and pause and think about how are libraries used in real life and how might they be used in code? If you think that code libraries allow us to borrow code just like we would borrow a book from a public or school library, you absolutely got it. So let's dive into that a little bit more. What libraries are we going to be using in our programs? First of all, there's random, which we're going to be looking at today. Then there's Pygame and TSK. I'm going to go ahead and say that Pygame is actually going to allow us to do some work with games, and TSK will allow us to work in some tasks. I know TSK, short for tasks, pretty nice. So let's talk about how we actually get into a library or attach a library to our code. First thing we have to do is import it. So this is how we actually bring a library into our program. I think of this as having a library card, allowing our program to look into the library. So this is how we're going to write that. We just write import and then random, which is the name of the library that we're going to be looking into. So that is how we're going to be able to go into any library. Import and then the name of the library. So what exactly does the random library contain? Well, it contains a lot of things that are going to help us randomize things in our program. So some functions that are going to help us pick a random number and things like that. So some things that we're going to see in there is random, which will choose a random integer. We also have choice, which is going to make a random choice, along with shuffle, which will shuffle things around. Thankfully, all of them are going to have some pretty self-explanatory names. Let's talk a little bit about functions. I know I mentioned this a little while ago, but what exactly is a function? So random is a type of function, just like the other two were, shuffle and choice. So function is also like print. Print is a function that we can call in our code. So a function is going to go ahead and do something in our code. That seems really broad, but it's an action defined in one location, and we can call it up whenever we need to. So a function is just saying, hey, this set of instructions is going to happen whenever we call this function. Thinking of this, we can say a function is very similar to having a book cover a specific topic. And whenever we want to cover that topic, we're going to look at that book. Same thing for functions. It's going to do a specific thing for us, and we can go ahead and call it whenever we want that very specific thing. So here we can see that print and input are both functions that are already made for us in Python. That being said, we don't have to do anything special for them to be called in our programs. We just have to use their name. So anytime we want to use print or input, we just go ahead and write them, and that's why they show up in that blue text. So function call. How are we going to be able to call functions that are in a library? How is that going to look? Well, so far we've been able to have print and input in some kind of format looking like this, where we go ahead and have print and input pretty much on their own. And we're going to be able to do something fairly similar with these functions as well. When a function takes in some information, that information is called an argument. So an argument is whatever goes inside the parentheses. For print and input, this has been some text or string. So here we can see that we have some string going into a print statement. Sometimes for our other functions, this won't be string. When we are going to be looking at these, they will tell us what they're going to need. And in fact, on the side that says assignment, in our assignments, they're always going to tell us what the function needs itself. So when we are looking at something that's in a library and is a function, how are we going to show that it's in the library and then a function itself? That's with the dot operator. It's our way of saying we're going into the library and that dot says, then we're going to go even further. This is very similar to how files are actually set up in our computer. So if you ever have noticed that when you're going deeper into your file structures, there will be a dot there as well. So just something cool to kind of notice. So this is going to be what it looks like. We're going to have our library, in this case random, and then we're going to have our dot notation calling our function at the end. So random.random would be a form of this. And here we can see how all of this together would look. We can have a variable such as num saving our entire random.random, and we can choose the arguments that we want our random integer to choose between. In this case, we chose 1 to 10. So it's going to choose a random integer between 1 and 10. Let's go ahead and look at some code. If you need a break, feel free to pause the video here. I'm going to go ahead and get started with some code though. So right now we just have some simple code going on, and that's totally fine. But I want to actually make this more exciting. It always prints 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's fine, but it would be so much cooler if it chose a random number and printed to that number instead. So first things first, I need to actually have access to the random library. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and say I need access to that. So import random, and we can see that import is blue, just like while, just like print, just like input. So it itself is a function that's allowing us access to the random library. So I haven't even done anything with the random library, so I can't just run my code yet. I'm going to go ahead and add another line underneath num, so that way I can go ahead and get some more variables set up for myself. So max num is going to be set to rand int. So I want a random integer, and for me, I'm going to say I want a random integer starting at 5 and ending at 15. So those are the arguments I have to give rand int. It has to be between 5 and 15 for this situation because that's the parameters that I want. Now, the one issue that I have with this line of code on line 8 is that I forgot to have my library and the dot notation. So if I ran this right now, it's going to actually cause an error because we don't have a function randint in our code. But what we do have is we have access to the random library, and the random library has a function that has randint in it. So let me go ahead and just prove that to you. So I'm going to go ahead and run this real quick. And we can see that randint is not defined. But once I put random.randint and run this, it works just fine. Now, we're not actually using our max num in our while loop. So we need to go ahead and change this. So I'm going to go ahead and have max num in our while loop. That way, we're going to actually be using that random integer that we're getting right here. Let's go ahead and run this again, and we'll see that we got a much bigger number this time. And I can close it and run it again, and this time it's 10. And you can see how if we were having this be a game, this could be different rounds of a game. How many rounds are you going to be playing? It could be 7, it could be 15, it could be any number between these. Now you can absolutely play around with these numbers if you wanted to, but I'm satisfied with my code right now. So when you are also satisfied, feel free to turn this in, and I will see you next time.